Now, over the years, the Cable Manufacturers Association of Nigeria and the Standards Organization of Nigeria have forged ties to tackle several infractions in the cable industry. Some of the industry concerns raised are discrepancies in certification of cable sizes, presence of substandard cables in the market, and provision for approved third-party certification of cables by the Standards Organization of Nigeria. The industry also alleged that some importers bring in substandard products and label them with the names of some of its members, thereby misrepresenting them. For greater awareness on the proliferation of substandard cables and the imminent dangers, let's now get into a conversation with Bukola Adubi. She's the Chief Operating Officer of Miccom and the current President of Cable Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I would like to ask you to enlighten us about the real cost of substandard cables in terms of the imminent dangers.
I think, to be honest, the biggest cost is threat to life, right? Because everywhere there is a building, there are cables in there for light, right? So imagine the cables in there are substandard. It puts everything and everyone in there at risk. So the biggest issue, as far as I'm concerned, let's even leave the bottom line for now, is threat to life. And I say to people that it's just evil. It's just wicked, right? That you know that this is going to burn. It's going to cause a blast. It's going to cause fire. And for whatever reason, some people are in this business of causing this harm to people. It's very unfair. Right? And then obviously to the manufacturers, especially, I speak for the local manufacturers, right? It's been the bane of every issue that we've had. Everybody knows and would say that Made in Nigeria cables is probably one of the best to use. But then we have this sting on our names, on our image, that you're never really sure. So if you go into the market and you're buying a particular brand, 9.9 out of 10 times, it probably didn't come from the factory. It's that bad, if not even 11 out of 10 times, if that exists. It's really, really bad. And, you know, we've been having this conversation back and forth on how to solve this problem, and it just seems to balloon. You know, so it's like immediately there's a strategy in place to try and stop it. The people on the back end doing this deed go that extra step further. So we need to always keep that 2 steps ahead of these guys. It's crazy. It's terrible.
Now, talking about conversations on how to fight this danger, I know that in May, you led a delegation of cable manufacturers to the Standards Organization of Nigeria Laboratory Complex in Lagos. Can you tell us the outcome of that visit?
Okay, so SON is our regulatory body, is the regulatory body for my industry, right? And we feel for a lot of these issues, we can't solve it ourselves. I can't exactly go to Alaba Market and start to lock up shops. I don't have the power, right? Yeah. So we felt the best thing was to have a sit down with the current DG, who I must say has been very supportive, right? He was happy to have this meeting with us. And part of the things that we had obviously listed as our issues at the meeting, of course, number 1 is the problem we have with these importers. So SON has a certificate that they're supposed to give to importers to essentially certify them and the products they're bringing in. For some reason, these importers have either falsified it or have been able to go around the system to get these certificates. So again, SON is aware and they know this is a problem, and they are also making plans. Obviously, they have made plans to stop it and nip it in the bud so that the certification that these guys are using is not accessible to them, or at the worst case, have an expiry date on it, right, to be able to stop that. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand is the fact that we get to raid markets. That's the biggest issue. We have to raid markets over and over and over and over again, and we need their supports for that, right? So how they're going to help us to ensure that these importers are not doing what they do. And even if they're caught, use 1 or 2 or 3 as a scapegoat. You know, you doing that would hopefully deter anybody else that has the bright idea to do the same thing. And I know for a fact, you know, that meeting was very enlightening, because then they also said to us a few of the things that they've been doing, which was music to my ears, to be honest. You know, so yeah, they've been very good. And, you know, about a few days ago, a week ago, we were invited to be part of some destruction that they do, because part of what they said at the meeting was that they regularly take a lot of these impounded goods and they destroy them. And we had asked to be part of that process. You know, let's see what you do to these things, you know, because this is our lives, this is our livelihood. And we were invited to come in for, you know, to cite those destruction processes. It's amazing. You know, what I saw there was like, what? You know, it was a mountain here, you know, of cables that had been taken from importers, from shops, it's very, very, very sad what I saw there. And it wasn't just cables, it was tires, it was LPG gas cylinders, it was even oils, you know, like engine oils and stuff. And it's got the names of like Mobil, there was Total, there was all the different brands in there. And I'm like, are you kidding? Right? So that for me as well gave me so much comfort that, you know, SON is doing something, you know, so it goes a long way. Yeah.
Wow. Very interesting to hear all that goes on in the back end of this. Apart from the raids on certain shops and the other things that the SON is doing in terms of trying to mitigate this situation, as individuals, or even small shop owners, what can Nigerians do to help stop these bad cables and the such going out into the public and causing such destruction to life and property?
That's a good one, because, you know, unfortunately, the cables are such that you can't exactly test them everywhere, right? You have to have some special degree or whatnot. But what I say to people, and what I would also say here, is it's not too much of a rocket science, to be honest. The bulk of the cables, at least the main ones, are made of copper. Copper is a pretty heavy metal, right? So when you carry a coil, it should, you know, have some weight to it, right? If it's very light, that's the first red flag, right? The second red flag as well is a lot of these sizes, they have gauges, they have size, you know, they have the sizes they're supposed to be. If your engineer is going to buy the coil for you, let them go with a caliper, right? Let them just, you know, size it up. I've seen cable sizes, because sometimes I go into the market myself, you know, to act like, you know, I want to buy a cable, I'm building something, give me my options. And they tell you, Madam, do you want original? There's Chinese original, there's Nigeria, China, you know, they have different levels. And you can tell the difference from the gauges. So the regular gauge is, you know, you can tell, I know the regular size, and then you have different sizes, as thin as a pen sometimes. It's that bad, right? So you go with a gauge, and you give or take an idea, if you're an engineer, you know what you're looking for, right? So that helps, because sometimes the cables are mislabeled. So you have a typical 4x50, which is 4 cores by 50 mm. What you end up finding is 4 cores by maybe 25 mm. So you're imagining someone using that, thinking it's 4x50, on a load that is supposed to be for 4x50, but it's actually 4x25. So you see where the problem starts to happen, right? The other thing as well is copper has got next to 0 iron in it, iron content. So it will not attract a magnet. Simplest thing. So a lot of what these guys also do, because the color of copper is like a reddish, brownish color. So they go with an alloy. So it could be a bronze or a brass, which clearly has iron in it. You know, it's cheaper with the iron, obviously. So it looks the part. So when they strip off the insulation, you see the color, you think it's copper. But you put a magnet to it, it's going to attract it because it's got an alloy of iron in it. So that, for me, is another easy way of doing that. But, you know, as an association, we've also said that we would do a lot more sensitization. just to help the regular guy on the street that is buying for his 3-bedroom bungalow or something. And hopefully we can try to get this menace out of the country.
I hope so too.
Yes.
And I know that you spoke very well about the role that the SON has played, but
Yes.
Are you content with the role that the other stakeholders involved in this substandard cables? Are you content with the roles they played? Have they lived up to expectation?
To be honest, we could always do more.
So that's a no.
There is always space for improvement, Top of the list, which is what I had also said about a week ago when I met with the SON, is the biggest issue I find as well is they're out of the ports, right? They should be back in the ports. So what SON is doing at the moment is striving to get the shipments are already out, so you're running after containers on a truck that are probably on the road at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. when everybody's asleep, So if they're in the ports, they would be able to nip it in the bud right there before coming into, the markets at all. So that, for me, is probably one of the bigger things that could be done almost right away, if possible,
So very briefly, I would like you to tell me, what are some of the challenges facing local cable manufacturers in Nigeria, and how do you navigate these challenges to still produce quality cables? You have 30 seconds for that.
Biggest issue, power. It's very funny that we do cables, but then power is the biggest issue. Another issue is probably infrastructure, right? The third major issue is foreign exchange. Because a lot of our raw materials are imports. And unfortunately, as manufacturers, you would think that we have access to Forex. We don't. We have to buy black market. So that pushes up our price, pushes up all of our overheads, and we then look more expensive. So then it now looks like the cheaper imports that are substandards are cheaper, you are more expensive. What do we do?
What do we do? Well, thank you so much for enlightening us on the subject.
Thank you.
Bukola
Thank you
Adubi, and all the best in your